Welcome to Command HQ. I am Brock Perdine, your intrepid host. And we've had a pretty outrageous wild day today with the E. Jean Carroll verdict coming through. We had a strong showing by Alina Habba afterwards, and we had a lot of this manipulation by Judge Lewis Kaplan, who is a total cunt. I apologize for the strong language, but it is true. If you read some of the transcript from the hearings in the last couple days, Lewis Kaplan has been one of the most abusive judges in New York. And this is also parroted by a number of other very experienced and established attorneys in New York who have experienced the abuse coming directly from Lewis Kaplan. And, you know, I wanted to highlight one issue with that case, which is the fact that, and I've been reading a bunch of tweets from like Benny Johnson and others, and saying that President Trump wasn't able to bring in evidence. For example, the tweets from E. Jean Carroll that were characterized as unhinged. Now, she is or she was, a sex columnist for Elle magazine. Now, her writing is provocative, or maybe it was, but she definitely went far past her time. And so her tweets were very out of touch with modern social media. And as harsh as the internet is, and believe me, if anyone knows how harsh the internet is, it's me. Yeah, I want to be very kind to E. Jean, because I truly think that she's being taken advantage of and abused by people like Roberta Kaplan, her lawyer, for financial gain, and from multiple angles too, not just the purported money liability that Trump is now exposed to, that E. Jean Carroll will never get a cent of course, but the fact that Roberta Kaplan is being funded by Reid Hoffman, a pedophile. Why is Reid Hoffman doing this? Because he wants to hide his Lolita Express trips. He wants to completely get rid of any criminal liability that he has with respect to Jeffrey Epstein, because he was on Jeffrey Epstein's list. which was never released. And again, that's one of the harsh elements of the internet, is just bringing something out like that. No one wants to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. It's the last thing I want to bring up. But it is necessary to show the intent, the motive, the reasons behind the funding, and so on and so forth. Now, Lewis Kaplan really insulted the American public at the end of the hearing. And we could bring up the transcript from United City Press, Inner City Press rather, where Lewis Kaplan informs the jury, gives the jury his view that they should never release their name and they should never tell anybody that they served on this jury. Now, I don't even know if Alina Habba or Roberta Kaplan have the identities or the actual names of the jurors. Maybe they do. I can't necessarily recall if the juror sheets were withheld from President Trump. They likely were. Now, this really poses a very serious challenge for Secret Service, of course, because they have to vet anyone in the same room with President Trump. So they would have had to do basically like background checks on each of those jurors. Therefore, Secret Service would have their names, and whether or not that's shared with President Trump, that's a whole different matter. However, I'm getting sidetracked. The fact that Lewis Kaplan would say such a thing shows that he has absolutely no trust in the American public to treat those jurors with respect. Now, because this is such a high profile case, and look what they did to me. I mean, they arrested me on some completely false charges. They charged me with 131 felonies. I've never been charged with a felony in my life. I don't do any drugs. I've never done any drugs. I've never smoked. I don't drink. I drank a few times in college. I have a stomach issue. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I was driving under the speed limit. I was wearing my seatbelt, and they just pulled me over. And then the next day, they dismissed everything. And if you look, and this has been in my life, it's been going on for 10 years. So it's something I'm used to. And I'm not asking for sympathy, and I'm not trying to bring attention to it, but I'm just showing you that they will do anything to stop President Trump. I mean, they'll go after some random person like me simply because I'm able to expose some of the corruption with respect to Allison Greenfield and Hobo Judge Engoron. I haven't said Hobo Judge's name in a long time, so I forgot how to pronounce it again. It's Engoron. Hobo Judge Engoron. I got to say it really quickly. And they drop these charges the next day, and they're trying to intimidate people like me. And the problem is if you try and intimidate me, it doesn't work. I'm not backing down. I didn't back down before. I don't have a history of backing down. But I don't like to pick fights either. It's not my deal. But when people put you in these positions, I mean, you certainly have to stand up for yourself. So Lewis Kaplan does not trust the American public. And in a big case like this, like the George Floyd jurors with Derek Chauvin. Now, some of those jurors came out and they talked to the media, so therefore their names became somewhat notable in the public sphere. I can't remember exactly offhand which ones did and which ones didn't. But there would be good and bad, right? I mean, you would think that the mainstream media would offer some sort of protection racket for them, just like they did with Allison Greenfield, and then accusing anybody who criticized her as, any criticism of her as harassment. And they kind of set the tone then to go after anybody who, would criticize a law clerk for trying to rig a trial against a former president of this country. I mean, this is just wild. Imagine if George Washington was alive And you had, I don't know, like a Benedict Arnold trying to rig a criminal trial, multiple civil trials, and then funding them with taxes from the British Crown, British King. These kinds of things cause revolutions. The Boston Tea Party. And that's exactly what you're seeing now. It is all kind of coalescing into one huge event. We're having 25, 26 states now potentially combine their energies together, their National Guards together, and they're going to force Joe Biden, who, by the way, was just up here in Wisconsin today, where he was doing some infrastructure deal, and he had the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, and he had the governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers, there. He also had Klobuchar and Tina Smith, senators from Minnesota, and I think he had Tammy Baldwin there as well, a senator from Wisconsin, and they were hyping up this bridge. They're spending $1 billion on this bridge that connects Minnesota and Wisconsin across the St. Croix River, I believe. And to spend that kind of money, but I'm getting sidetracked here, but to spend that kind of money on this bridge is absurd. It's absolutely outrageous. I'm all for local investment, you know, and stimulating the local economy, especially when it comes with federal tax dollars coming in and being injected. But you could get that bridge done for much less. $1 billion for a bridge, that doesn't make any sense. It's not even that fancy. You know, I think they spent less money on the 35W bridge that broke into several pieces during the George Bush administration, and several people had died. So yeah, it's certainly, it speaks to Joe Biden's incompetence and his waste of money. But getting back to this event, everything is being consolidated into this huge revolution. It's not even a civil war. You're seeing everything being pulled apart all at once. You're seeing the court system, the legal system, everything being torn apart. You're seeing state rights go to the trash bin. You're seeing these states trying to force Joe Biden to federalize their National Guards. So they're going to force Joe Biden's hand. And what that means is they're going to try and create some confrontation, and they're going to try and get the military, like the Army or something, to come in and force the National Guard from whatever state it is, whether that's the Texas National Guard or the South Dakota National Guard, whoever comes down to help. There's also the trucker convoy. Okay? All of it is just, we're building, the momentum is building towards this event. Now, the other thing that's extremely bizarre is we had the Jim McMahon allegations come out now, with literally like hours after the E. Jean Carroll verdict. And then there was another one as well, another sexual assault case that came out. I can't remember exactly what it was. So it's all coordinated. I mean, McMahon was obviously kind of waiting for this, or maybe it was because he was trying to hide behind the Carroll headlines to an extent. And, you know, the allegations in that case are so incredibly petty. If you actually read through it, I read through a little bit of it, but I certainly have to do a little more research on it. I mean, this stuff is like, if we were living in the 80s or 90s and some woman came out and said that, I call him Jim McMahon, Vince McMahon. Jeez. I'm thinking of the quarterback, the former Bears quarterback, Jim McMahon. Vince McMahon. But anyway, so the allegations in the Vince McMahon lawsuit are so petty. And if this were the 80s or 90s, people would not bat an eyelash. They'd be like, whatever, you know. And these women are scoring paydays with all of these allegations. all of these activists are scoring huge settlements from these lawsuits. Meanwhile, you have 95% of plumbers who are men, and something like 98% of construction workers who are men. Something like 92% of firefighters are men. Something in the range of 90 to 92% of police officers are men. 88% apparently of combat veterans are men. You never hear about men getting any sort of preferential treatment in society. It's all activists or women. And not to tie that into all the other crazy, wild things going on, like the trucker convoy, all these National Guards coalescing into one, and the unraveling of our legal system before our eyes. People, you know, and Lewis Kaplan is basically at the top of this unraveling. He is such a cunt. If you just read through the transcript and the way that he treated President Trump, the way that he treated Alina Habba, the way that he treated Habba's partner, Madeo, unreal, absolutely unreal. And you know, this is very similar to how I was treated. And the other thing here is, you know, President Trump is like, I've never met this woman. I don't even know who she was. She was in some sort of photo lineup or something, apparently. And there was a picture taken. It was so grainy. It was so cloudy. You couldn't make out if it was E. Jean Carroll or if it was, you know, Britney Spears. Not to compare those two, but you just couldn't tell. You couldn't discern who that individual was from the level of quality of that photo. And it just reminds me of everything that I went through with random women that I had never even met. I didn't know their names, never talked to, of course. And they suddenly come out and they're able to do the same thing. They shut down your speech, make wild, outrageous, totally absurd, false allegations against you. And you have absolutely no ability to A, defend yourself. B, if you do even try, you're going to get swatted, like my house got swatted in 2017. Then I just got threatened 2 days ago by the same twerps, you know, sending me a cease and desist letter, trying to shut down my speech with respect to the stream, for example. And so this is very real. This battle has been waged now for many years. And I think that people are finally awake enough to realize that if they don't stand up right now, there might never be any going back in this country. It's that bad. And everything is shut down. Like, I can't even, I want to show some of these videos, but remember, you know, the American Revolution kind of came on the heels historically from the French Revolution. Now, it did come years later, but and many of the principles from the French Revolution were installed and observed and learned from French Revolution that the founders of this country learned from and then applied and used in our revolution when we beat the British. And it's similar today because really the revolution in Europe right now is in France. And I'm actually wearing my French shirt right now. Can't see it because I'm like way too close to the camera. But I'm not French or anything. I just have a French shirt. The French Revolution, the destruction of the establishment, the aristocracy, the arrival of people like Napoleon, a dictator, although a very benevolent dictator with respect to the actual population of France, except for these wars that he was waging. He installed a very efficient and organized legal system in France, following the main structural narrative of the French Revolution. And, you know, the founding fathers learned so much from the French Revolution. And it was really the basis for the American Revolution. And I'm bringing that up because we're now seeing that again now, and I'm going to show this video. This is the main video I have up of these farmers protesting in France because they're so fed up, and the same thing is happening here. So let's play this.
Là c'est fini, il va y rester que les 4 pylônes.
I don't know exactly what's going on here, but you're seeing all these videos of these French farmers spraying manure on government buildings, taking over McDonald's, and they're just fucking pissed. I mean, if the federal security forces and in law enforcement in France were anything like the Department of Justice, they would treat these people, these farmers, like January 6ers, and they would be spending the next 10 years in prison. Like, if you tried to do that in the United States, they'd probably put you in Guantanamo Bay. I mean, we live in such an extreme police state in this country. And it crept up so quickly, but also very subtly, because it really caught people off guard. And for whatever reason, maybe this is sort of like inbred into the French. No, I didn't mean it like that, but you know what I mean? Like bred into the French, that they have this sort of intuition about tyranny and tyrannical regimes, and they can sense it, and they're actually standing up, which I think is a signal to the rest of the world that enough is enough. I can't even remember what these other tweets are, so let's just go through them. Okay, so this is another one here where, not to get off the topic of the revolution, the Ukrainians shot down one of their POW planes because the Russians were taking POWs, putting it on this plane, flying it back to Russia, and they shot it down, so they killed their own service members. I mean, unreal. And then they blamed the Russians and said the Russians did it. I mean, now we have proof that it was Ukrainian air defenses. And this brings into question that other commercial airliner that was shot over when it was flying over Ukraine. If you remember, that was like in 2014 or 2015. And then they blamed the Russians. They blamed separatists in Donbass, I believe. And it was probably the Ukrainians who did that as well. And I think The Hague brought charges against these rebel groups in Donbass and really tried to harass and shut them down, because they were kind of like a straw man, you know? All right, so what else do we have? Oh yeah, E. Jean Carroll crap. Jeffrey Epstein victims 0. Now, that's not totally accurate because Prince Andrew has had to pay up, but the spirit of this is actually true, because you see people like Reid Hoffman funding the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit, And I tweeted about this yesterday, and it was like, I did not want to tweet that, but I felt like I had to. And no one else was talking about the fact that Reid Hoffman is funding Letitia James, the Attorney General in New York, for anyone who doesn't know. And Letitia James, $47,000. Here's the other thing, $47,000. So it was 47,100 bucks, right? And if you really think about it, what does that mean? Well, that's the reason that Reid Hoffman contributed that exact amount of money, is because he was signaling to Letitia James that he was stopping President Trump from becoming the 47th president. Now, I was gonna maybe put that in the tweet, but I thought it would be a little too complicated and it would get off message a little bit. So I was gonna do it maybe in another tweet. And then the $100 was saying that, you know, Democrats will be president, will win the election, right? Will come in first place. So that's what your boy Reid Hoffman was signaling. And then underneath that is the fact that he is doing everything in his power to cover up his Lolita Express trips with Jeffrey Epstein. And if you look at Reid, and speaking of Reid Hoffman, now I think I've shown this before. We'll do it live. So this is Reid Hoffman's Wikipedia. And if you go into the history, so you can just click this view history link here, and then you go down here and you look at like the last 100 entries. So they banned me from Wikipedia for adding the fact that, and we'll have proof here in the changelog, right here. Yeah, right here. So they banned my ass, kicked my ass off Wikipedia. I have it highlighted. It's my name, Brock Ferdine. When I added, and we can look at the ad. It's right here. If we click this link, this is what I added. Come on, 15 April. There we go. And we go down and we look at controversies. If I remember what I put there. So I created a controversies section right here. And what I said was, if we could see it completely on the screen, yes, we can pretty much. Hoffman has publicly admitted to hosting numerous events and accompanying disgraced sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein on various trips. And then I sourced that, I cited it with the citation number 82. Many have speculated that Hoffman is bankrolling E. Jean Carroll's lawsuit against President Trump because of attempts to prevent the disclosure of his ties to Jeffrey Epstein to become more widely known. And then I put a citation there as well. So, and then it goes on. Now, I cleaned this up like once or twice. I probably shouldn't even have done that. I should have probably just left it. But, and as soon as I did, this, I don't even have words to describe Specifico, because this is beyond a piece of shit. Specifico, this guy, whoever he is, just an anonymous fucker on the internet, right? He's beyond a piece of shit. I don't even have words to describe him. I just imagine that he's like a turtle lord or something. He's just some evil turtle lord living in his mother's basement. Or maybe it's even Reid Hoffman himself. Who knows? Whoever it is, they were reverting my changes immediately. And so this was, you know, what, last year? About a year ago. If you look here too, and I've looked through a couple, I mean, you really have to look through it. I don't see anybody else adding the Jeffrey Epstein stuff before it. And maybe someone did, I don't know. I just didn't go through it all. Now, what's interesting is if you look at Reid Hoffman's Twitter, his X account, the moment that President Trump testified in the E. Jean Carroll case, Reid Hoffman put out this 3-minute clip from his retarded live stream called Possible. By the way, who would call their live stream possible? And who would constantly talk about the stupid shit that he talks about? And if we could go through this, but in this clip, he talks about how OpenAI, so ChatGPT, used Wikipedia as a large language model to train its model on, and that it has huge translation components to it, and that's why OpenAI has used Wikipedia to train its, and I should rephrase that. So Wikipedia itself is not a large language model, but I think that it gets confusing. Using Wikipedia's data to train OpenAI's large language model. How about that? So he goes into this. So why would he talk about that and he tweeted this out 5 minutes after President Trump testified in the E. Jean Carroll case. And so why would he tweet this out about AI and Wikipedia and stuff when he knew that all this stuff was out there? Now, because it's become so public, someone else added it after me. They banned me, so I can't add it, right? Here, they said that they were going to ban me if I continued to, he continued to revert my changes, and then I continued to add them back. And then he banned me here. See, reverted edits. What did he say? Oh, he said that I was a disruptive editor. Crazy. Yeah, right. Persistent. I'm a persistent disruptive editor. Whatever. And then they put it in protected status. Can you believe that? So they protect pedophiles. Unbelievable. Corsius. What a fucking faggot. Fucking asshole. Boy, does this piss me off. It really, it gets my blood boiling. It does. But the good thing is, someone else added it back because there was so much public pressure. There was so much exposure of Reid Hoffman's Lolita Express trips that he couldn't avoid it any longer. But this really speaks to the fact that he is so terrified that he put out this Wikipedia thing immediately following President Trump's testimony in that case. So he's a pedophile. Reid Hoffman is a pedophile. He took trips on Jeffrey Epstein's plane, the Lolita Express. And that's the reason he's funding all of this bullshit in New York with respect to the E. Jean Carroll case. He's funding Roberta Kaplan. He gave $47,000 plus $100 to Letitia James to symbolize the fact that he was trying to stop President Trump from becoming the 47th president. It's all just very, very wild. And you really do need to think kind of almost like you have Asperger's to really just like go through and connect the dots and understand the big picture, because everybody gets lost in the weeds. That's what happens when you read these transcripts. You get lost in the little details, the little objections here and there, and then you get lost in the emotions of it. And that's why you go through it and then you issue spot the main things that really matter. Like, for example, issue preclusion and collateral estoppel, and the use of this issue preclusion to prevent Trump from relitigating things that were brought up in the first trial with E. Jean Carroll. And I tweeted out this video that I quickly made, and I wish that I would have maybe had a little more time to put into it.
Children. Then I go back in, stagger into my office, and start reading a stack of Ask E. Jean letters.
So
I never.
right here, E. Jean Carroll is clearly high on Xanax or Klonopin, whatever anti-anxiety medication she's using. Maybe she's drunk. I don't know. She definitely is drinking something here. Now, it's early in the morning, and then she talks about being a lazy person waking up, and she's 75 years old. So maybe she gets a little bit of a pass for that. But she seems to imply that she's done this throughout her life. Waking up at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. She's got her dog, a poodle here, a standard poodle. Her, you know, these are all things I didn't really want to point out in the video because I'm trying to be very kind to E. Jean Carroll because I do think that she's being abused, and I think that she has she definitely has dementia. She's very loopy. Again, I don't want to like go out of my way to say mean things about E. Jean, but you can tell from this video that something is not right with her. She lives alone at her age, and being alone for such a long time, it's definitely taken its toll on her. And you can see it very, very clearly. And these are all things, again, that I wasn't willing to point out in the video because I didn't want to be overly mean to her. And by the way, X, Twitter, they're cucked. They've totally shadow banned me. This video itself should be getting 100,000 views like my previous tweets, and they won't even allow that to happen. And I've tried. I've got emails out to them. I'm asking them what's going on. I'm sure they'll respond in a week after, you know, none of this really matters to the extent that it has to get out now because that's, you know, it's real time. She painted her dogs. She dyed her dog's hair blue. Okay. Right there. You see that? Her hair is orange. She dyed for this video. Now, Elle put this out on their main YouTube. Why they would do that, I don't know. Crazy.
Office and start reading a stack of Ask E. Jean letters. I never thought much went on.
You know, and I love poodles. Those standard poodles are fantastic dogs. And when I saw this, I was like, I don't know, is she abusing animals? You know, maybe.
In the morning anyway. Women have facials in the morning. They have their hair.
And the way that she would phrase this, like women have facials in the morning. Again, this is something that I could have clearly pointed out in the video, but I didn't want to be overly sexual. I understand that she's referring to moisture treatment, facial moisture treatment, like one of those pads that you put on. But she's saying it provocatively, almost like she's implying that she wants, you know, the Urban Dictionary version of a facial, if I say it politely, or if I could say it politely. She's got a scarf around her neck. You know, what is she? See, when a woman is aggressive and strong and dominant and strong-willed, you can tell it's natural. E. Jean Carroll is trying to, I think, come off that way, but she doesn't have the personality for it. There's something off about it. It just doesn't seem genuine. You know what I mean? Like when young women who know that they have men by the balls and they can do anything they want and they're just naturally strong-willed and dominant, you can tell it's genuine. This woman, if she was younger and attractive, if she was when she was younger, I don't even think she could get away with it. She just, it's not in her personality. She's actually very, very, she just wants love. She's very vulnerable. And so she's acting out to try and get attention, That's why she's making these crazy allegations against President Trump. Now, do I think that maybe she somehow met President Trump, shook his hand, whatever? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, Agent X, I remember, made a comment that maybe there was something going on there. But after you see all of this evidence come out, after I watched this video, and given it's 30 years later, whatever, 23, yeah, it's 30 years later. So you don't understand exactly what her personality was like then versus now. Like, she could be much more mentally healthy back in the early 90s versus now. However, I just don't buy it. I really don't. Like, the more you watch this video, you're just like, nope, not possible. And here's the thing. So, and this is the verdict form that the jury got. So the jury said there was something like 60 something in punitive damages. I don't know, 10, 20 million in regular damages. And there was like something else there, for a total of $83.3 million. I don't know who is on the jury to somehow come up with these numbers. It was 8 times, I believe, what Roberta Kaplan had asked for. Like, who lives in New York? Who are these people? I really, and I'm not saying this from like a perspective of like, you know, because I understand that Lewis Kaplan he doesn't trust the American public. He doesn't want anybody to have their names, and he wants them to remain anonymous. That was his recommendation to the jurors before they left. I understand there's crazy people on the internet who would otherwise, you know, say stupid things, right? But I think that would be drowned out by just traditional media and them getting actually fair coverage. But beyond that, you know, obviously Lewis Kaplan doesn't trust Americans. He treats Americans like dog shit. Like he could care less about anyone else except for, I guess, probably himself. Not even his court staff. The way he treated his court staff, the way that he ended everything today with Alina Habba saying that, you know, she wanted to thank the staff of the court. And then Lewis Kaplan cut her off again and said, "You're welcome," on their behalf. Like, what the fuck? You know, it is so arrogant. He is such a cunt. Anyways, he hates Americans. He hates the American public. But if you watch this video, I think it, and the tweet before this as well, like, I don't think people understand how crazy this woman is. And this woman is about as crazy, if not crazier, than the women who I had never even met, seen, or spoken to, who made wild allegations against me. At least those women were like younger, under 50. She had to do something to get attention. E. Jean did. I don't trust people who don't use their real first names. I don't know. It just, I don't know. I just, her, I don't even know what her real first name is. Maybe it's like Elizabeth or something. But why would you want to go by E. Jean?
Done. Not me.
So she's got a scarf around her neck, like she's trying to act like she's French or something. I just don't get it.
I like getting up at noon.
I mean, it's just sad. It's just sad. Lives alone.
My personal life is
it does look kind of cozy in there.
fascinating. This man has given his wife a $30,000 engagement ring.
And then she's spending a lot of time physically proofing this letter that she's printed out. Imagine how much paper she's wasted. Talk about climate change and all the nonsense in the mainstream media about that, how, you know, we should take less trips and that we shouldn't use vehicles because we're harming the environment. What about this woman? I mean, just this is such a petty issue to bring up at this juncture, but like, how much paper has she wasted printing out all these letters? Because as this video continues, it talks about the fact that she has kept, and maybe I clipped that piece out, I can't remember, that she's kept every single letter that she's ever evaluated that's ever actually been sent to her in her sort of catalog here. And she's printed it out. Maybe Elle printed that out for her and sent it to her, but it appears as though she's doing also like a lot of physical proofing. And when you really, I mean, that's like cutting down trees, right? That's like pure abuse of the environment. Now, trees grow back and everything, but these are the kinds of people who say that you shouldn't drive, but we should chop down a forest because we're printing so many fucking letters and fucking books and magazines and shit.
He wants her to give him a $6,000 watch. Well, she did, but it wasn't enough because then he wanted a Rolex. How she's handled this is she's had an affair with somebody at the office. I am so tormented and confused by my obsession with my ex-boyfriend from college. Here's the last
She's so loopy. She's clearly high or drunk.
line. It's been 22 years since we broke up. I understand you. She and I have a lot in common. That was a bad idea. Oh. I am so real. See these
Something is wrong with her.
eyes? Look at the bags under my eyes.
And I'm honestly not just saying that because I'm trying to smear E. Jean. I'm not trying to smear her, and that's exactly why I'm toning it down. Something is genuinely wrong with her.
I worry at night when I'm in bed because, you know, a line from me can change their life.
See, and this is like this narcissism, the ego, very egotistical, grandiose.
Now, whether it changes for the better or for the worse, I don't know. As you see, I have stacks of L's here and there and everywhere. I get sent one every month. Sometimes, if I'm very good, they send me two. You can't think in New York if you're dating 16 people, which I would be doing if I were in New York. You go.
I think that just speaks for itself, right? This is your typical millennial woman as well, dating 20 guys at the same time.
Go to the woods to find out who you are, and then you find out who you are, and you're even happier than when you came. It's wonderful.
Let me take you to the jungle in my head where animals.
There's no words really. It just
I
gets
call it the mouse
crazier and
house
crazier.
because some very distinguished mice live here. Kahneman lives in the kitchen. Tversky lives
It's almost embarrassing. I cringe. It's just.
in the bedroom. This is my shed.
I feel really.
on that side
I feel bad for her dogs.
are the books that most influenced me growing up. On the door are the list of my dogs: Marky, Fortuna de la Spunky, Heidi, Tits,
What the fuck?
Bloody, and Hepburn.
So
The
wait,
streams
she
and the
named one of her animals, one of her dogs, Tits. What?
rivers were dry.
She painted a bunch of these trees blue. Why isn't she getting cited? This is definitely an issue with harm to the local environment, you know, putting these chemicals on trees and how that could contaminate the local watershed there. That's an issue. I'm actually really surprised she hasn't been cited for this. And more importantly, why is she doing this? I don't know. I mean, like, I've been to in Minnesota and Wisconsin, the terrain is similar, obviously, like this. You know, you have streams running through and people have cabins. in the woods. I've been to a lot of cabins in the woods, and I have never once in my life met anybody as crazy as this. And again, I am being totally honest with you. Have I been to remote locations in woods where people have tree stands if they're hunting for deer, and they've attached the tree stand to a tree? Yes. Have people put ribbons or bows on trees to mark them because they need to mark trees for proximity reasons, to understand where they are in the forest, or for other reasons? Yes. But again, those ribbons you can just cut off and it's not permanently damaging a tree. Applying chemicals like paint to a tree could potentially damage the tree itself. And cause a tree to die, by the way, because it seeps into the roots.
so horrible.
And again, this is all symbolic of who she is. She's basically destroying trees and the growth of trees and the sort of the root structure of the tree as the chemical, the paint, seeps into the tree itself and then gets sucked into the soil.
Horrified me that I came out and started painting the rocks blue to indicate
What the fuck? Honestly.
that there was once a river here. And then
This is like the inverse of reality. She wants to paint rocks blue to signify the fact that there used to be a stream running through there. What the fuck?
after I got done painting the rocks, I just sort of walked over here and then did that tree and then...
So this is the kind of woman who would be like a climate change activist and is complaining constantly about the fact that global warming is posing a real threat to society. Therefore, she would be like trying to secretly start fires in the forest. That's how crazy this woman is.
Did that tree and then I did this tree. And then pretty soon I'd done this whole forest. God! What's the best piece of advice I've ever...
Well, you know why she's living alone in a house in the woods in upstate New York now.
Given, what a horrible question to ask an advice column. Oh my God! Hang on. Eat, drink, and be merry. That's it. That's my advice.
She painted her Prius with these blue spots. Of course she'd be driving a Prius, right? Makes total sense. Wow. Watching that on stream, I had like a 4x cringe factor. When I was actually making that and editing that a couple hours ago, I don't think I truly understood and realized how crazy this woman is. I mean, obviously I was like, she is nuts. But seeing this and watching it like for the first time in its form as a tweet is unique. I feel terrible. I feel terrible because like our country and our legal system, if they let this woman get away with what she just did, getting an $83 million verdict, what does that say about the future of this country and all these other cases? Like, she should have been thrown out of the court the minute that Roberta Kaplan filed that defamation complaint, or the sexual battery complaint, whatever it was. I think there was a defamation claim in it, and there was another like sexual battery or assault claim. Of course, they changed the statute of limitations on that particular claim to allow for this crazy woman to file her claim. Now, what evidence did she even present that offered any sense of indication that she actually was assaulted by President Trump. None, other than hearsay, you know, basically her saying that she told a friend and that the friend said that, oh yeah, I remember that. They did have some friend come in. It just, it's all coordinated. Okay, so we've seen that. We've seen that. Oh yeah, here's Haba. Jersey Queen, Mama Hobby. Mommy Haba.
No.
Mommy Haba.
No.
So she comes in very strong here.
No. No. I'm glad you asked me that question. No, I'm not having any second thoughts about representing President
She is
Trump.
pissed.
It
Wow.
is the proudest thing I could ever do. What I am having second thoughts about is the license that I stand here with that the people in there are supposed to have.
Jersey Queen.
I have not spoken.
Mommy
because I
Haba.
respect my ethics while I'm on trial. But let me now speak about what has happened. I have sat on trial after trial for
Wow,
months
it's so strong.
in this
It's like,
state, the state of New York.
I love it.
Attorney General Letitia James, and now this.
I love it.
Weeks. Weeks. Why? Because President Trump is leading.
You know,
in the
I
poll.
love the fact, gotta fix the camera's focus here. Of course, that would happen right now. I love the fact that Mommy Haba brought up, well, it's probably a bad combination of words. I love the fact that Alina Haba brought up the fact that Reid Hoffman was involved in funding this case. And the only bone that Lewis Kaplan threw at President Trump was granting partial motion to unseal or unveil who was funding the lawsuit. That's it. And it's almost like Kaplan knew that Reid Hoffman was involved with Jeffrey Epstein.
And now we see what you
Probably
get in
did.
New York. So don't get it twisted, whoever asked me that question. I am so proud to
Love
stand
it.
with President
Love
Trump.
it.
But I am not proud to
I love-
stand with what I
I
saw
love that Alina Haba is yelling at these people. Just yelling at them.
in that courtroom. I'm
Boom.
not finished. Let me just finish and I'll take questions, please.
Look at there. Oh, did you hear that? Just telling reporters what to do. I mean, in complete control of this entire situation. Alina Haba is younger than me, but when I watch things like this, I'm like, Alina Haba is older than me. She is just, and I think Alina Haba is a couple of years younger than me. I'm just blown away, really.
Before I walked into court, that judge decided that every single defense President Trump had, we were not allowed to raise in front of the jury. It is in writing, and I encourage the journalists, the real journalists, to take the
Yeah.
minute to look at his orders.
Yeah, go and read them.
There was no proof. And I couldn't prove that she didn't bring in.
So again, this goes back to the whole collateral estoppel, issue preclusion bullshit that has destroyed our legal system for the past 100 and, whatever. As a doctrine, it's became more widely used in the last 70 years, 50 years probably. But it is just such a piece of shit. They use this in all these fucking trials to fuck people over. And it's used in several ways. And, they're all insidious. It's not like one is more insidious than the other. But there should be, the only solution is like de novo review. That's, some states use de novo review to get around some of the res judicata or collateral estoppel, the unconstitutional application of it, so that there's sort of a new hearing in front of a new judge or a fact finder that then can make findings, and then you can basically have a clean slate. So due process requirements are satisfied. The problem is, in a lot of these hearings, they can collaterally use any of the findings they make in an initial proceeding and then apply those same findings in some other thorny proceeding to really fuck you over. And one example is attorney grievance proceedings, where if an attorney is sanctioned, they can use, especially this is widely used in New York and in Minnesota. It just happened to Michelle McDonald. It happened to Stephen Donziger. Lewis Kaplan did it to Stephen Donziger. That's the whole nature of his disbarment. You can't argue the basis or the merits of the original sanction in a disciplinary hearing if you've been sanctioned by a judge in some of these states. You're supposed to be entitled to a hearing in front of a neutral fact finder if you're subject to discipline. But what they can do is they can deny you that right and then immediately discipline you, and you cannot speak to the merits of the underlying findings, and you're fucked. Because then it's like, I use this analogy of saying like, okay, so there's an order saying that you can't use the word yellow, but you have to use the word yellow at work because you work in construction, you have to paint something yellow, so you have to refer to something yellow. And then you go to court because you've somehow been found in violation of the order because you use the word yellow. And then you go to the court and you're like, oh, I had to use the word yellow. And they're like, no, you could have used cyan, or you could have used mustard or something, some other word for yellow. And you're like, am I in the Twilight Zone? So it's the Twilight Zone doctrine. And if there's one thing that can be removed from the legal system to make it 5 or 10% better, it would be something like this. Now, this is also what's fucked me over in a lot of these cases, is because these kangaroo courts, they issue these crazy orders, these gag orders, like they've done to me. You have no ability to defend yourself. They'll put some, security staff literally right behind you as you are cross-examining witnesses to try and intimidate you. They will yell at you, they'll cut you off, they'll do everything possible to deny you the ability to have a fair hearing. And the only thing you can do, it's really like these struggle sessions, is to fight through it as hard as you can. So if they deny you the ability to actually say anything or defend yourself, which they try and do, you go up and you testify in your own defense, and you literally read out things into the record, like tweets. Like, that's maybe one thing that Trump could have tried, but it would have been really bizarre considering that it's President Trump and he's a former president. Plus, it would have taken a long time. Plus, Lewis Kaplan would have shut him down anyways. Is President Trump could have literally just got up there with E. Jean Carroll's tweets, a whole list. And I did this with Hobo Judge in Goron, is I took all of these tweets and posts from Facebook and I put them in exhibits, and then I tried to file them through the New York Unified State Court System filing system, but they had actually locked down that case and I couldn't actually file into it. So I had to email it to Chambers. And since the file was so large, I had to really compress that PDF, because there was like, and I only got like a slice. There was thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of posts, tweets, and everything. Like, I got a very, like, not even 1% I got, and it was still like 400 pages. I spent 2 days diligently, meticulously putting together all of these exhibits. And if you were in Trump's shoes and you had this, for example, with E. Jean Carroll, you had the full roster of tweets and you're up there testifying, you could have tried to read them in the record. That's what I've tried to do in the past when they've tried to fuck me over. and they'll figure out ways to fuck you over. And they'll say, oh, well, we only have so much time allotted for this trial. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care how much time you have. I have a right to testify in my own defense. And in doing so, I am going to read these in the record. And they'll be like, well, you can't do that. I'm like, yes, I can. I'm in charge. So they'll basically just shut you down. So you have to push through it. And that's exactly what Mommy Haba is doing here. She is going in as strong as you possibly can and really pushed Lewis Kaplan up to his limit. And I think Lewis Kaplan also threatened Jersey Queen Alina Haba today with contempt, said that if she went any further or something, or said something like, you're going to spend some time in lock. Oh, yeah. No, this isn't that tweet. Simon Atiba tweeted out something just before this, maybe this morning, where he said that Kaplan had threatened her and said that she's going to spend some time in lockup for what she's saying. And you really, unfortunately, have to push. This is a federal judge. It's a little more thorny than usual, of course, because they have a lot more power. Especially Lewis Kaplan, who's a senior judge in the Southern District of New York, and he's dealt with some really, really, powerful people like SBF, and even though he was kind of a Asperger's type, you know what I mean? Like, he's dealt with some characters. So the point I'm trying to make here is Mommy Haba took him to the limit, tested his limits, tested his boundaries. There's nothing else you can do. The entire case is rigged. I mean, she did a fantastic job. And I did read through the transcript from today and yesterday that was tweeted out by Inner City Press. And man, I am just impressed with the way that I think Alina Haba dealt with a lot of the limitations that were in place, because there's like nothing you can do. If you're Alan Dershowitz, if you had 50, I shouldn't even use Alan Dershowitz, because Alan Dershowitz is a Lolita Express type. But if you had the best lawyers, if you had Johnny Cochran in there times 15, then you had, someone like, like Felix Frankfurt, or like, I don't know. You had David Boies or something. If you had like 10 or 15, David Boies isn't a strong oral arguer. David Boies is like pure paper cut. He's all about paper cuts. And he uses his strong memory and strong analysis skills more so than just his ability to orally argue cases. Whereas you can tell that Alina Haba's real skill is trial work, arguing, and that's kind of, where the rubber meets the road. Whereas David Boies is more like an abstract appellate type, even though he is a litigator, and goes into court and represents clients and stuff. My point here is it wouldn't matter if you had 10 David Boies in there. It wouldn't matter if you had 50 Johnny Cochrans. You would still lose this case, and you would still have the same outcome. There's just so many roadblocks put in place. And I think Alina Haba is probably one of the very few attorneys in this country, considering her gender, because she's a woman, obviously, where she can go in there and she can really push Kaplan's buttons more than I think maybe Tacopino could, or Madeo can, or Chris Keiss can. The other thing that works really well in Haba's favor is the fact that she is naturally very strong-willed, you can tell. So she's willing to do this. And the third thing that really works in Haba's favor is the fact that, well, there's actually two more things, is that she doesn't care about any of these hit pieces that are written about her. Just like me, I could care less. They Photoshop images, they'll arrest me with 131 fake charges. I don't care. Go ahead and do it if you want. It's not going to scare me. I don't get intimidated. The fourth thing is that Trump really respects Alina Habba. You can tell. That's genuine. And if anything, Habba is wise beyond her years. Because I think that she's had to learn some of this relatively quickly recently. She had a lot of litigation experience before. She was a clerk for a state court judge in New Jersey. But this is much different. And when you're dealing with this level of tyranny in the court system in which she's dealing with, it's a different ballgame. Because there was and there is some fairness when you're just dealing with everyday common people. But when you're dealing with people like President Trump, there's not going to be a fair court. There's never going to be a fair proceeding, not in this context at least. And when I'm representing myself, and even when I had, well, when I had an attorney who actually kind of reminds me somewhat of the way that Alina Habba looks, not personality, but not the strong-willed piece of it. My attorneys, if they were male, got treated like shit. I had a pussy named Nathan Hansen, who's kind of a well-known attorney in Minnesota. He constantly ran as a Republican for a House seat in the state legislature. And he would never campaign. He would just put a sign. He put 2 signs up. And then he would always brag that he never actually had to use any advertising dollars to run for office. And he was just using it as a ploy to basically get clients. And I was like, bro, Nathan, why would you run for a seat and not do everything in your power to win? That makes no sense to me. Like, you're a pussy. Get out there and campaign. If you're going to actually put your name on the line, you better actually win. And so, again, these are like fake tactics. And you're not deploying them in an art of war dynamic. You're doing it just to fuck with people, like fuck with constituents in that district. And to me, that's dishonorable to an extent. There's a level or a layer of dishonesty there. So what I really do like is that you can tell that there's absolutely none of that with Jersey Queen Alina Habba.
The dress, there was no DNA. There was no expert. My experts were denied. 2 of them were denied to come in.
Yeah.
They didn't let me bring up that Reed
Fuck those
Hoffman
people.
funded Miss Kaplan. And you know what we got in there?
Fuck those people in the court system who did that to President Trump. Fuck them.
Who said that she is a drug
And I'm
addict
saying,
and the drug
again, I'm saying that peacefully and lawfully. I'm just frustrated.
addict is herself. That friend, I found out in there, was paid for by Miss Kaplan's
Oh yeah, of
firm,
course.
and that is disgusting. That is a violation of everything I stand for, and that is why I stand with Trump. And that is why so many Americans are so proud that he is running again and so excited to run to the ballot box. But don't get it twisted. We are seeing a violation of our justice system. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not allowed to be stripped of every defense that you have. You are not allowed
Oh,
to
yes,
be
you
told
are.
that you can't
That's
bring it
the-
up. And imagine a point where a judge tells the lawyer, before your client, the former president of the United States, the leading candidate and obvious nominee for the Republican Party.
I think this is everything that E. Jean Carroll wants to be, but isn't.
Or he takes the stand to defend himself. Ms. Haba, tell me the questions you're going
Oh,
to
yeah,
ask
that's the other thing.
in open court, and tell
Right,
me
so I brought that up this morning, is the fact that I'm going to turn the heat on as well. It's getting cold here in Minnetonka. That's the other thing I brought up this morning, that, you know, Kaplan was screening questions because he was trying to shut the whole direct down with President Trump, and he was trying to prevent President Trump from speaking in court. He didn't do that with any other witness from what I saw in the transcript. Maybe I missed something. It's not like I read it with a fine-tooth comb. But that, again, that's just another tactic to rig the entire proceeding. You know, I mean, Trump answered one question and said that, yes, it's false. So Kevin Doyle, who is an attorney in the Attorney Grievance Committee in New York, that's the office that disciplines attorneys. And they have a constitutional duty to discipline attorneys in the public's interest. Kevin Doyle, we could bring him up. There's a photo of him actually in a Catholic magazine article, and he's bashing President Trump. And he has tried to and been successful partially in disbarring and suspending multiple Trump attorneys, including Rudy Giuliani, although he fucked that up. But he is trying to, or he did try to, discipline and sanction, maybe even privately admonish Alina Habba. And that's the other way that they're trying to manipulate these cases, is by collaterally and indirectly using and weaponizing the professional responsibility offices in this various dynamic in these states to go after anybody who's representing President Trump, to cuck them. Basically, it's extortion. And I think Kevin Doyle's backed off a little bit because, and I'm sensing this from the way that some of these cases went down, especially when Tacopina was still involved, although he cucked out as well, is, and I'm sure he saw some of my shit and he was like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Maybe that was the reason that he decided to end his tenure with President Trump. I don't know. I mean, it's always in the back of my head. The issue, I think, is, so Alina Habba was suddenly not signing pleadings, like motions and stuff, and having her law partner sign pleadings and Chris Kise. And then her role shifted to legal spokesperson for President Trump. So it was almost like a temporary vacation from representing President Trump while still representing President Trump, because the court of public opinion is 90% of representation. But now Habba is actively representing Trump again and signing pleadings. So what I think happened is Kevin Doyle tried to go after Habba and then backed off, realizing that he was in over his head and that the weaponization of all of these various deep state bureaucracies, especially in places like New York, people are onto it. They've woken up to it. They can't get away with it secretly in the way that they got away with it in the past. Especially the fact that, I mean, I've put a lot of effort into exposing these offices, and they're somewhat secretive because no one is really familiar with how they worked. And that's, you know, I've been tip of the spear in exposing all this stuff, right? Like Susan Humiston in New York, in Minnesota, I caused her to get exposed, and the Star Tribune finally came out with a bunch of actually accurate articles about her, and she just went crazy. I mean, she got really, really pissed. No one understand these are like, they're so powerful, these offices, and the directors of these offices are like the SS of the legal system. They are the stormtroopers of the legal system. They have very, very wide discretion in who to discipline and who not to discipline. So this political power that they wield is virtually unlimited. In fact, they can even discipline judges, even though there's, you know, judicial commissions set up in states and in the federal system as well, in each circuit. There's not, it's a different apparatus in the federal system because the courts themselves have to govern themselves. And so there's like the chief judge of whatever circuit appellate court typically handles judicial complaints. And then there's a panel that's impaneled to deal with that complaint. But in states, there's typically these judicial commissions. And the federal system has a federal professional responsibility office. And the director of that office is, what's his name? Who put out a bunch of very, very accurate, and in the federal system has discretion and oversight over multiple, not just lawyers and stuff who are who work for the federal government and stuff, but also like FBI agents. So it's a little more conflated. The state system is a lot easier to understand in that you basically have just a judicial commission and then a state professional responsibility office. And then they have wild different names for all these different attorney disciplinary offices, depending on the state. In New York, you have one that is called the Attorney Grievance Committee. In Minnesota, it's called the Office of Professional Responsibility. In Wisconsin, it's called the Office of Lawyer Regulation. In Georgia, I think it's called, just looking at this because Fannie Willis has received so many complaints lately. Oh man, they have a really, really weird name in Georgia.
Exactly what he's going to respond. And then edited my questions, edited the response he was allowed to give. And guess what my client...
So I'm really actually I'm not glad or happy that Kevin Doyle backed off any discipline of Alina Habba, but I feel like, you know, if anything, I've helped defend and maybe put like a moat around Alina Habba a little bit. And I think maybe Kevin Doyle hopefully has some respect for Mommy Habba, Jersey Queen, Alina Habba, because look, I mean, representing President Trump is going to get you disbarred. 100%.
He took the stand. He abided by the rules of this.
Which lawyer? That's why Taco Pino cucked out. I mean, Chris Kise is probably going to get disbarred. Not because Chris Kise deserves to be disbarred. Absolutely not. Just simply because Chris Kise has represented President Trump. Now, so there has to be some other incentive then for someone to represent President Trump. Now, some of this is like, well, maybe they'll get appointments. So Chris Kise is probably betting on the fact that maybe he'll serve in the Trump administration. Maybe Alina Habba is also, I don't know. I don't think Alina, actually, the more that I think about that, I don't think that's the reason or the incentive for Alina Habba. I genuinely think that Alina Habba is dedicated to this case. And I'm just, like, I judge people from their energy. I mean, I don't think Alina Habba would, I think she would love, you know, something like, you know, if President Trump would ever make an appointment or senior legal advisor in the White House, something like that, or a White House lawyer or something. But probably like a senior legal advisor in the White House, in a team. But, you know, I think Alina, I don't know what Alina Habba thinks. I'm like the last person to know what other people think, but I'm just, from an intuitive perspective, I think that Alina Habba is dedicated to this case and defending President Trump, and more importantly, defending the rights of others who might be subject to a bad precedent here, or
this corrupt system that I have seen, we will immediately
yeah,
appeal. We will
corrupt system. The one question, if I ever had one for Alina Habba, would be, in other cases with non-celebrities, non-public officials, are the cases as corrupt as what you're seeing with President Trump? And I would assume that the answer would be no. However, knowing how crazy everything has got recently, the answer could very well be yes.
We'll set aside that ridiculous jury. And I just want to remind you all of one thing. I will continue with President Trump to fight for everybody's First Amendment right to speak.
You know, with the Alex Jones jury
to
too,
defend themselves
yeah,
when they are wrongfully accused, and to be able to say, I didn't do it. And to double and triple and quadruple down and say, this is wrong. This is wrong. But we are in the state of New York. We are in a New York jury, and that is why we are seeing these witch hunts, these hoaxes, as he calls them. And this is another one of them. Be brought in New York, in states where they know they will get juries like this. It will not deter us.
Forum shopping.
Fighting, and I assure you, we didn't win today, but we will. That was made in there, and the behavior I saw in there, some of which was reported widely today, gave us the most perfect record on appeal. And even if I needed it, which I don't, we were stripped of.
Well, look, I mean, I don't know. The arguments that you could use would not be successful in an appeal. One of them would be the fact that Kaplan is biased and that he's been very, very abusive. If you brought that issue up on appeal, it would get struck down. Those get struck down all the time. But he has been extremely abusive.
Of every defense, every single defense before we walked in there. And I am proud to stand with President Trump because he showed up, he stood up, he took the stand, and he faced this judge. And you know what?
I mean, I think the issues in actuality on appeal probably would be, you have to look at the standards for each. If you want to, you want to kind of look at the standards to see which one is the easiest to pick off. So any order from Kaplan is going to have an abuse of discretion standard, which is virtually impossible to pick off on appeal. So that's why, even though the argument that Kaplan has been abusive is true, and you could bring that up on appeal, it would get thrown in the trash right away. I think you'd have to argue damages. Has E. Jean Carroll suffered damages? You'd have to actually look at how much income she's had, her medical records, if she's been diagnosed with depression, what kind of drugs she's on. I know that Habba brought this up in this little impromptu press conference. It sounds like she's a drug addict, but you could bring up the fact that she's been on, whatever antidepressant or Xanax her entire life, long before these allegations. And so therefore she hasn't shown by causation the fact that any mental health issue is caused by harm from statements made by President Trump. So I think it's going to go into how damages are actually assigned and asserted. Those are going to be kind of the main thrusts of this particular appeal. You could look at the content of the statements themselves and see if there's some angles you could argue on appeal. But you also want to knock down the 83.3 million. So you'd have to look at the punitive nature, like, was Trump acting with malice when those statements were made? No, obviously not. But on appeal, like, how do you argue that? You'd have to look at that, because that could knock down $60 million in damages right there. So your goal, if you're coming here to write an appellate brief, is you want to, you're not going to win the case, for one. Although you are going to appeal it to the Supreme Court because you are President Trump, right? And the Supreme Court will not take this case. This is like the one case they probably won't take, because this is asserted against President Trump in his personal capacity. Whereas a lot of these other cases, these criminal cases, are somewhat entangled and commingled with Trump's official capacity as a former president. And that's why the Supreme Court will take those cases. Now, I think that they tried to mock Alina Habba for trying to assert presidential immunity. I can't remember exactly if it was this case. I think it was. I could be wrong. Again, I mean, I have my own professional life, so I'm not tracking this as closely, for example, as like Robert Gervais, who's like a very, very good legal live streamer who I watch a lot. Nick Rakita, I mean, he doesn't really watch stuff. Nick Rakita is just a huge balloon. He's just a hot air balloon. He doesn't actually look at details and analyze things very closely. So I just forgot what I was going to say. If you're going to approach this from writing, I'm getting in this like Asperger's mode of trying to like look at everything, connect the dots. So if you're approaching this thinking that you're going to try and issue spot the appeals issues, and you're writing the brief, you have to look at it from a strategic. Lawyers are not strategic. They're all tactical. You really have to look at it strategically. Like, what's the best standard to attack first? Because those are the easiest issues to pick off for an appellate court. You always put those up front. The other thing is, you want to have a very strong opening sentence. You want to put like your most bold, it's not about catching the attention of a reader. In this case, your intended reader is an appellate judge. You want to like knock them out of their seat. So you really have to like use an engineering perspective and delete everything that's just kind of like, call it, in a software environment, they call it cruft. You got to get rid of the cruft. You got to like distill the most basic element of your claim. And then you put that right at the very top. Now, it's difficult, for example, when you're writing your own briefs, because you've got your own emotions and that can kind of cloud your judgment. And if you're writing your own briefs, and because you don't have money to hire a lawyer, someone like me, like I don't have a ton of money to hire lawyers. And even if I did, I probably wouldn't, because I don't trust them. But like if I have a lot of time, I can do a good job, because I can then remove some of my emotions and then distill what I really want to be clear about and have some clarity. So with this particular brief, and if President Trump is your client, Alina Habba and President Trump, this is a very unusual attorney-client relationship, because they're basically one and the same at this point. Because both of their lives are on the line. Like, Alina Habba's professional career is on the line. She's going to get disbarred if she says one thing wrong, basically, in front of Kaplan. Who knows? Kaplan might even sanction her and try and get her disbarred. So they're both basically throwing all their chips in this case. Now, you have to do that with the understanding that you're not going to win this case on appeal, and it's not going to go up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will never accept it. I think they made fun of Haba for trying to assert presidential immunity in this case. I don't know if that's true or not. But I think President Trump did make these denials somewhat in 2019 when he was president. So there is actually the element of presidential immunity potentially being applied. Those statements did not fall outside of the scope of President Trump's role officially. But I would be communicating this if this were like my friend and I was representing them, or if my friend was representing me, I would say, we're not going to win this case. Our best hope is to knock down the punitive element of the damages liability verdict. That's it. That's all you can do. And the only way I think that you can do that is by speaking to the fact that Trump did not make these statements with malice. And if you can even knock down half of that punitive award from 60 to 30, that's a win. Hopefully you could maybe get it knocked down completely and get this more in the territory of $20 million. And again, this is going to go to the receivership anyways in the Manhattan civil fraud trial. So it's going to be basically garnished out of the Trump organization, unfortunately. So Trump's going to have to sell either a piece of one of the buildings or one of real estate, one real estate asset that President Trump owns that could potentially cover this. So basically all you're trying to do is minimize the impact of the Trump organization in a receivership, bankruptcy, or there might not be a bankruptcy situation, but they're gonna they set this up in such a way that they can collect. And collection on some of these judgments is oftentimes some of the most difficult work. But because they have the Manhattan civil fraud trial set up, it's almost like a catcher. If it's like a baseball game. So the pitcher is this case. So the catcher is going to catch it, and it's going to be money in their hand because they have the receivership set up with Barbara Jones, and they're going to get a verdict here. They already got the verdict. They're going to get a judgment here from the verdict for the $83 million. And they already have the collection process fully in place. And that's, again, very unique. And that's the coordination here that hasn't been picked out. And, if I was Alina Habba, and I know, again, she doesn't have a lot of time to think through some of this stuff because she's very, very busy with these cases and all the other traveling, between these courthouses and meeting with President Trump, meeting with other people. So I get it. But I would have brought up that particular issue in this impromptu press conference. I would say how corrupt this collection process presumed to take place with the Manhattan civil fraud trial, where they're going to collaterally use this judgment in that trial in some collection apparatus. And you'd have to dig into the rules to figure out exactly how they're going to do that. But they have this thought out. And it's a trap. It's a collection trap. It's a collection trap. It's a fucking collection trap. They didn't even do this to people like Stephen Donziger, like when Chevron lawyers were going after him. I mean, they have really thought this out. And they've coordinated this pretty well from a high level. Now, the execution has been kind of poor at times, especially with Allison Greenfield and Hobo Judge and Goron. But, man, oh man. All right, so
I'll continue to do so with him. Yes.
Ms. Hubbard, is the former
Of course, I've spoken with the president.
Ms. Hubbard, is the former president scared now of the consequences of his actions?
The former president does not live his life in fear, as you've seen every single day.
Fucking reporters.
The former president and probably future president will continue to fight for Americans. Thank you very much, everybody.
Now, Trump probably wants Alina Habba to say probably there because Trump wants to fight this tooth and nail to the very end. That's the other thing about President Trump. Trump loves fighting. He loves it. He needs it. So he doesn't want to say probably. But President Trump, I guarantee, will win in November and will be inaugurated in 2025. Now, say what you want about my prediction. I don't predict many things, but I just know this is going to happen. So I wouldn't have said probably there. All right, so what else? We got this meme about the hobo judge Engoron. Do you think Judge Arthur Engoron is bought and paid for by George Soros to interfere with the 2024 election? There's no doubt in my mind. Yeah. Look at this. Look at these comments. There's not one person who's saying no or bringing up an interesting point if they are saying no. Look at this. This is crazy. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. This is the best of them all right here. Honestly, this is crazy. Got some John Stossel in there. Oh my gosh. Jeannie Lochner. Yes, and I cannot stand him. Here's Bim. Let me zoom in here. Yeah, there we go. It's a little bit better. I think no one in the court system actually respects him. He certainly doesn't have a proper demeanor to be a pee-wee football referee, let alone a judge. Yep. I mean, dude, what Hobo Judge Engoron and Allison Greenfield did to me to try and have me arrested with 131 completely hoax and fake charges on October 13th that were dismissed the next day. I mean, duh, these people are entirely evil and entirely corrupt. And for them to coordinate with the corrupt local cops in this particular jurisdiction and for them to be able to get away with it for a couple months now is outrageous. And I have news for them. They will get prosecuted in 2025. I guarantee it. All of them. It's just amazing to me that they are so arrogant that they think that they can get away with it. I've never, usually there's some troll in here saying no or whatever. I mean, this is nuts. This is wild. Oh my gosh. I really do want to find someone who says no, just to see what their perspective is. Well, that's true, Mark Munoz, who says, doesn't matter what I think, it's what you can prove that counts. Yep, true. Well, that's, that's another reason why I spent so much time reviewing the evidence that I had, because you can make wild allegations, but you need evidence. And I had the evidence. but it was still difficult to go in there and review all of that. And I did it a couple times, and it was pretty taxing mentally, especially looking at all those tweets from all those crazy radical left-wing lunatics. I mean, it was just check his bank account. Yep. People really understand what's going on here. All these frivolous cases in New York are to try and bankrupt him because they can't beat him at the ballot box. It's a typical liberal scheme, hoping he'll say enough, I give up. Yeah, right. Exactly. Does the bear shit in the woods? Yep. Oh, that's why the bear was shitting in the woods. Ah, get it now. Oh yeah, absolutely. He should be disbarred. He should be removed from the bench, and then he should be disbarred. Yes, absolutely. Even though he's retired anyway, so it doesn't really matter. That's why they put him on the case, because there's, you know, no consequence to him career-wise at all. He can do anything he wants. Plus, he has the protection of the state court system as well as judicial immunity. He's kind of like a fief, a lord, you know, in like a feudal system and like a fiefdom. He's got like a fiefdom protecting him. He's bought and paid for sure. I absolutely believe it, without a doubt. Swamp. Absolutely. You should go straight to Gitmo for military tribunals. Absolutely. Without a doubt. He was definitely a regular on Epstein Island. Yeah, Little St. John. In Goron equals Greece. Oh yeah, no proof that Trump inflated the value of some of the real estate assets. I mean, the one proof that they had was that Trump lied about the square footage of his condo or something. Yeah. Dude, I mean, like, people don't understand how much lying goes on in bank applications with hedge funds and stuff. Like, I used to work at Wells Fargo Home Mortgage with mortgage modification, and these hedge funds would come in and buy with billions of dollars a bunch of these mortgages for pennies on the dollar. And I've said this a couple times, and how much lying takes place. And for them to accuse President Trump, who has a massive real estate portfolio, of inflating the value of these assets, and the only piece of evidence that they can actually come up with is the fact that Trump inflated square footage in a condo. Considering the size of his real estate portfolio, it's like saying that you lied about the color of your sock on Tuesday. It's just nonsensical. That's a bad analogy, but it's just like, it's kind of like saying, okay, I got the square footage wrong. What do you want me to do? I mean, even if that were true, which it appears to be true, there are civil fines for these reasons. You know, like, okay, $5,000 fine, $10,000 fine for someone who's a billionaire, or for a business with billions of dollars in potential revenue, or millions of dollars in revenue. $10,000 or a $5,000 fine is sufficient. If it's a smaller business, maybe a smaller fine, whatever. But there are other civil levers that could potentially be used. And the cost of this trial, just from a security perspective, it costs $1 million per day just to get Trump there. How many days has Trump actually been in court? Many, many days. So the cost of enforcement is wildly out of line with whatever benefit the state is getting from this. Absolutely, all he does is berate Trump and his lawyer. He's holding up, disqualifying all kinds of Trump's rights himself. Okay, so that's a little bit messed up there at the grammar. Got the Golden Girls agreed. Betty, what's her name? I wouldn't be surprised if he had a little kickback arrangement. Yeah, absolutely. If you look up Kangaroo Court, this is the picture you'll see. Mostar, yes, he is paid for. Totally by someone. Absolutely. Yes, 100%. Yes, 100%. This is the first time I've never seen a no or a troll in here. I'm blown away. Legitimately blown away. This is nuts. This showed up in my timeline of tweets here. This meme. So that's why I kind of pulled it up. So, what else do we got? I don't think we have anything else except for we could talk about the fact that where I live, considering your boy Hobo Judge Engoron was trying to get me arrested, he did actually get me arrested on 131 fake charges that were dismissed because of their claims that I had criticized Allison Greenfield, his principal law clerk, trying to destroy my life, bankrupt me, destroy my ability to support myself and have a professional livelihood, destroy my career, destroy any professional activity that I was associated with. These are the kinds of evil people that are in control of our legal system and in control of our lives and other people's lives and, you know, businesses that hold up the economy, you know? And so he clearly hates Trump. He's tried to take a little more control of this case ever since he was criticized because Allison Greenfield is running the entire case. Very, very weird. She sits right next to him within hand job distance. And as I detailed earlier in videos where I attended multiple contempt hearings with a lawyer in New York named Robert Wallach, who had not paid his real estate, his landlord, his rental stuff, not paid his rent in a while during the pandemic, and was in arrears something like $250,000. Also hadn't paid his taxes in New York. And Hobo Judge Engoron, there was a show cause hearing. Wallach no-showed the hearing. He was required to attend. He also no-showed depositions related to the hearing. And Engoron just dismissed the entire contempt. And let him settle the case for pennies on the dollar. And also tried to make it non-public. And then also what's important about that is that Allison Greenfield is running that entire hearing. It wasn't Engoron. And Engoron has now tried to position himself more as someone who's running this case against President Trump. And maybe that's more true now, but it still remains a fact that Allison Greenfield wrote that decision to value Mar-a-Lago at $18 million. Whether or not Hobo Judge Engoron told her to value Mar-a-Lago at $18 million is a different thing. Maybe he did. She still wrote the decision though. to justify it. So she's still responsible. And because Engoron was trying to set her up with a position on the bench, basically almost trying to put her in his seat, I have reason to believe that maybe it was Greenfield who decided that Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million. Because everything that I've seen, and this goes back a couple years where I've emailed with Greenfield to get access to hearings and stuff, long before this case, long before anybody knew who Greenfield was. You know, when there was only 3 people in a hearing instead of thousands of people tuning into this Trump thing. So I've seen them in different settings, okay? And Greenfield was running it all. It was all Greenfield. She's extremely strong-willed. She's very domineering. She's like a very domineering Jewish, mother almost. And then Engoron is like a traditional, like, Jewish son who wants to obey his mother and will do anything to get the, adulation of his, female family members. That's how Engoron actually acts in private, especially with Greenfield. So you can see this power dynamic between them. She's basically got a leash on him. And, unfortunately, and I'll say this because although I do think, based on what just happened to me over the past couple months, or they were trying to destroy my life, they are evil. Maybe they didn't know what they were doing. I don't know. I should take that back. I do think that they knew what they were doing for sure. They absolutely knew what they were doing. They were intentionally trying to destroy my life because they're sociopaths and they think that they can get away with anything. And I think the more that, like, okay, so Engoron has aged a lot in the past 2 years. Now, Engoron was a slob. He was a schlub. He was unkept. That's why he was called the hobo judge. But now, he definitely cleaned himself up for this case. Like, he got a haircut. He took a couple showers. Maybe he put some lotion on his face or whatever. His hair is much more white actually in the past 2 years, but even beyond that, just in the past couple months while this case has been ongoing, if you look at Hobo Judge Engoron, he has aged drastically in the past 2 months. And I think it's because, in part, the stress of this case, but even though he is an evil douchebag who disrespected my family by doing what he did to me, I think it was like on the day of closing arguments that some person, again, these swatting incidences are terrible. And, any random person doing this should be jailed and charged if they're doing this. And they tried to do this. It was reported out to Hobo Judge Engoron. Tried to swat his house. It's terrible. Awful. No one should be subject to that. So, but I do think that Hobo Judge Engoron, although it would never happen, of course, needs to be held accountable for his misconduct in this case, particularly the donations and the fact that they've tried to say that the donations did not exceed the allowable amount under court rules, under the judicial canons in New York, when they clearly did. I mean, you had douchebags like Klasfeld come out, and you had others like this Daily Beast reporter. I mean, the facts are very clear. You just go to the contribution site and then you look at the judicial canons. That's all you do. It's like an inverse of reality for them to say that by extension, Hobojudge Goron, because Alison Greenfield's conduct binds to him because she is his clerk in a public forum, that they both are not in violation of the donation rule in New York, which sets a pretty low limit of $500 per year of donations to any partisan cause. And I believe it was 2021. I'd have to go back and look at the records, but it was one of those years where Greenfield contributed something like $2,100. So it was like 4 times the limit. Now, $2,100 is not a lot of money. I'm not saying like she's a huge contributor, but it was still very clear that she broke the rules. And the fact that they're trying so hard to say that she didn't break the rules shows you that they're willing to do anything to take President Trump down, which is, it's unethical. It's unethical. And then you have douchebags like pedophile Reid Hoffman donating $47,000 in some sort of like symbolic number, 47, because Reid Hoffman is trying to prevent President Trump from becoming the 47th president. $47,000, 47-1, to Letitia James to collaterally bring all of these proceedings all at once to overwhelm President Trump. And you're also seeing now, it's so visible and out in the open that anybody who supports President Trump or anybody who is associated with the MAGA movement is targeted. Now, this trucker convoy in, I think I don't even know where it's starting, but it's going down to Texas. I mean, they're already talking about the fact that they're trying to target that and, beware of Fed operatives and so on. Like they're definitely going to probably try and arrest a bunch of truckers. And they'll just target that as well. They're crushing. Look at what they did to me. They brought 131 fake charges 2 months ago and then dismissed them the next day. And they're involved in some RICO scheme where they're acting in a conspiracy with these officials from New York and where I live to try and squeeze me and put pressure on me in retaliation for criticizing Hobojudge Goron and his principal law clerk, Alison Greenfield. It's just evil. It's just totally evil. I'm glad that I was put in place for this reason. I am very thankful to God. I'm very thankful to be subject to it, to the persecution. I could not be happier when people write hit pieces about me that justifies and validates what I do. So not that, not that you're seeking attention. I never want attention. I never wanted attention. That's never why I do this. But, it's very clear, and especially considering the fact that all of these publications are now going bankrupt. The Daily Beast is going to go bankrupt probably, and I know they were in bankruptcy or they're very close to it, and they just had a bunch of layoffs. So I would project that maybe the Daily Beast is probably going to go belly up either right before the election or right after it. I'd probably say October of this year, the Daily Beast either lays off a lot of its staff or it goes bankrupt. And I know that I think maybe it was George Soros who just bought a controlling interest or injected a lot of money into the Daily Beast. It doesn't matter. It's still going down. Forbes is hanging by a thread. WAPO is losing millions of dollars every single month. The New York Times is barely surviving. Like, the New York Post is doing okay. CNN is crashing and burning. A lot of these local newspapers over here, we have the Star and Sickle, also known as the Star Tribune, that's definitely crashing. By the way, they have a comment section on articles, and they have to approve your comment before it gets posted publicly. I mean, what? Do I need a parent on the internet to approve what I can and cannot say? A lot of these articles have to do with actual government issues and politically core speech. So why do I need some sort of nanny state with the Star Tribune? Like, what the fuck? Man, we got to get some trucker convoy videos, and I gotta hold on. Let me just find one or two more videos here regarding either the French Revolution or the trucker convoy. Shoot. Hold on. I'm gonna find it right now. Let me find it. I can't believe Amy Coney Barrett ruled in favor of the federal government and the Biden administration. Let me find it. I should have bookmarked it. Oh, here's another good one. That's your girl, E. Jean. Unbelievable. You know, I thought I was in the Twilight Zone when two women who I had never met before, never seen, never talked to, didn't even know their names, filed these ridiculous orders to gag my speech. I was like, what the fuck? And then to understand that they actually later, and I didn't know this at the time, but I found out later that they went to school together. They went to the same Ivy League school, of course. Well, I gotta be careful here. If I say, even if I said that, they'll probably try and say that I violated their gag order. It's amazing. They always come out of like Ivy Leagues or some crazy feminist environment like Barnard or some women's college. Where are you? Where are you? Here's a funny St. Paul hazmat crews got called to the Capitol because they found a bunch of homeless items in a bathroom. 7 jar. They found some dirty socks and some homeless bags and probably some crack in a bathroom. So they called the hazmat crew. Talk about idiots. All right, all right. What else? Come on, come on, come on. Oh wow, we got some military activity. Got some military activity. 377. Air Force, military jets in the air, coordinating something or moving stuff. Let's see. I really want to find this French Revolution stuff. Oh, here we go. Here's some of the trucker convoy stuff.
This is my land. This is what we pray for. And this is God's plan. If you ain't from here, these are my people. And this is my land. This is what we pray for. And this is God's plan. If you ain't from here, these are my people. And this is my land. This is what we pray for. And this is God's plan.
God's plan.
If you ain't from here, these are my people. This is my land. This is what we pray for. And this is God's plan. If you ain't from here, these are my people. And this is my
You'll see this on
land.
loop forever.
This is what we pray for. And this is God's plan. If you ain't from here, these are my people. And this is my
Look at how many
land.
people. I mean,
This
just
is what we
stacked.
pray for.
Stacked, back to
This
back.
is God's plan.
Look at that.
If you ain't
So you got all these single young men coming in at the southern border, and then look at all these
from here,
American men show up.
these are
These are real men showing up.
my people.
This is what being a real man looks like,
And this is my land.
and not being a pussy.
This is what we pray for. And this is God's plan. If you ain't from here, these are my people. This is my land. This is what we pray for. And this is God's plan.
All right, let's play this. This is from Mario Newfall. They're spraying manure on a supermarket, and then the roof apparently collapses, but you can't actually see the roof collapse. Boy, just imagine the smell, huh? All right, we got the convoy stuff. Let's pull this up. This is what the French Revolution looks like. The USA. It's rolling through Texas. Rolling through. Rolling through Texas. Fuck Biden. You know, to sell this country out, assuming that he can rig the election with these migrants coming in here, presuming that they're going to somehow be able to vote, which is absurd. So they're obviously going to be illegally voting somehow or stuffing ballots. Selling this country out, man. This is what D-Day looks like at Normandy, right? Except with farmers in January in France. So these are French farmers have staged a protest at Le Touquet Beach in the Pas-de-Calais region near President Macron's second home. Wow. 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 It's just amazing. Woo. Fuck Macron. Okay. So this is actually kind of a good tweet to end this out on. Breaking, this is from earlier this afternoon. Breaking, judge threatens to lock up Trump lawyer Alina Habba. Pray for Alina Habba and her family. Certainly, everybody out there who views this video or is watching right now, pray for Alina Habba. Pray for Alina Habba and Alina Habba's family, as I will too. Habba needs your prayer, and I'm going to pray right now. Got music in my ear. Hold on. Okay. God, please give Alina Habba your spiritual armor. Please protect Alina Habba and Alina's family, the same spiritual armor. Amen. Habba is really in a thorny situation here with Kaplan, and needs all of the prayers that she can possibly get. Wow. All right. Speaking of prayers, so as I mentioned this morning, the corrupt city attorney here, as well as the chief of police, have repeatedly threatened me over the last 10 years. And they did so again a couple days ago. They sent me a cease and desist letter, which I forwarded to the FBI and basically every single U.S. attorney's office in the country. As well as I filed a criminal complaint locally here, and I filed a bar complaint. If anything happens to me, if I don't stream or whatever, it is because of the chief of police here, and I streamed about it earlier. If you want, you can go back and look. There's pictures of the chief of police as well as his name there. I don't want to bring unnecessary drama to the situation. That's not my intent. But at the same time, they did swap my house in 2017. They claim that I put up a Facebook post in 2017 that was, by the way, completely peaceful. And they will do anything to shut down speech. They've shut down my judicial protest Twitter account. I can't tweet to get any sort of reach whatsoever. I don't know if that's because this is the E. Jean Carroll defamation damages trial and they're just trying to cuck my account for that time period or not. I have emails out to them to see what's going on, but I'm sure it'll take a week to get any sort of response from them. And that's what they're betting on, is just the fact that they're just trying to, delay me. Whatever. I don't care. If anything happens to me, if I don't stream or whatever, it's because of those two people. And I would advise you to put up websites, criticize them, file criminal complaints against them, file bar complaints, because what they're doing is unlawful. They're involved in a RICO scheme with officials from New York, which I described with Allison Greenfield and Hoa Judge and Goran. And they're involved in a very serious felony scheme, and they will be prosecuted in 2025. I guarantee it. So, you know, they're furthering evil, and that's as much as I'm going to say. So I hope, and so with that said, I need your prayers as well. So pray that God provides my family and I with spiritual armor, and pray that God provides me with spiritual discernment and guides me with his wisdom, and sends the Spirit of truth, and sends the Holy Spirit, and binds that into me, and gives me peace of mind and urgency and energy and everything else that I may or may not, everything else that I may need in the next days, weeks, months, or even years. So, and I'm praying also for this country. I'm praying for all of you out there generally. I'm praying for forgiveness. I am praying for some peace in this country. I'm praying for justice. I'm praying for God's will to be done. I'm trying to find the right screen here. All right, and subscribe, follow my channel if you're out there on Rumble. Like the video, please. And I will see you probably tomorrow morning. I plan on streaming. And hope you have a good weekend. Peace out. Bye.
Thanks for watching Command HQ with Brock and Agent X. We'll see you next time.